The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hello, I'm Carl Seidel, host of The People's View. The show is sponsored by the Nashua City Republican Committee, and if you like to attend our meetings, they're the second Thursday of every month at 6:30 at the Crown Plaza. And if you want to find out more about our organization, you can go to NashuaGOP.org to see our website and learn about the events that we have.
Welcome to The People's View.
Hello, and help me welcome Ray Chadwick, who's president of the Granite State Taxpayers.
Hey, Carl, thanks for having me on today. It's a real pleasure.
Nice to always talk with you, Ray.
Oh,
we
yeah.
have good conversation.
Yeah, Carl, I always enjoy talking with Carl. Yes, I'm chairman of the Granite State Taxpayers, and Granite State Taxpayers, most people don't know, is the oldest established taxpayer group in the state. It was founded back in 1992 by former late Governor Mel Thompson and the late Senator George Lovejoy at the time. So everybody remembers Mel Thompson. Mel Thompson, of course, is the one that gave us that great phrase, that
Axe the tax.
Axe the tax was one of the things. He used to carry around this cardboard axe, and that was his thing. But the other one is his phrase, low taxes are the result of low spending. So anyway, he and George formed Granite State Taxpayers. They're at the top of a list, and it was close to 25 other names that were in there who were the founders of this organization. So it grew in the 90s, as you can imagine it might, with a governor behind it. And then over the years was quite influential in a variety of legislation. Large numbers of people were members. And then sort of in the 2000s, it tended to, tail off a bit. People had different opinions on how to take the organization, things like that. So I've been involved with it now for about 6 years, and I was elected chairman back in January. So part of my responsibility here is to grow back the organization and make it as strong as it used to be. And we're doing that. We have a website, which is www.granitestatetaxpayers.org. And we put up position papers and articles, things like that, to inform taxpayers in the state of New Hampshire. Now, by taxpayers, we mean pretty much anyone who pays taxes, and that includes corporations, that includes individuals, families, etc. We value, well, as you can imagine from the phrase, low spending in government, frugal government that is efficient, basically attends to its responsibilities under the Constitution. We believe in continually reducing taxes, if that's at all achievable. And basically, generally, a government that functions well. We sort of try to stand against things like special interest groups that are, working their way up to access to the public money. It's interesting, Carl, because I think when you look at government, this is my belief, is it's a place where the money aggregates and government has certain responsibilities, and that's unarguable. They're set out in our various constitutions. But the issue comes when you have a special interest, like say, for example, I need a abatement on a tax for a certain entity that's going to do something. If that's the case, then I can wind up, in most cases, paying a lobbyist who will go around and talk to people and attempt to convince them to come along with what I want to do. The taxpayers, in comparison, are sort of this amorphous group that are focused on the activities of daily living, making a living, paying their bills, paying their mortgage, putting the kids through school, those kinds of things. They don't have the time to get into the minutia of what goes on at the State House and how bills are done and created and how certain special things can be put in. And, you're a long-serving state rep, so these kinds of things are indeed possible. So basically what we try to do is to be an oversight and, to the best of our ability, look out for the interest of taxpayers.
So do you need people to contact you if they can read your articles that are in your website?
Yeah,
But if they want to help or want to participate somehow,
sure, definitely. We're always looking for people interested in that task because we're all volunteers. Unlike certain organizations, we're all volunteers, so we're not paid. Anyone who wants to be involved in that should go to our website, www.granitestatetaxpayers.org, and there's a box on the right that says join the email list, and there's another box that says become a member. But if you join the email list, then basically we'll keep you advised of things that are coming up, testimony we're giving on various bills, and I'll talk about a few of the ones we're interested in this year. And that's a way for individuals to leverage their time, because I see us as we're very interested in this.
and you're an information bank too.
Yes, exactly,
They
right.
learn a lot more
Right.
about the
Right.
article, if it's a tax article, or what it really means,
Yeah.
how it's going to affect the people.
Yes, exactly. And we have a board of about 12 people right now, and they're all on there to guide the organization. But it's interesting because everyone has a specific area of interest. Like we got one guy, and he's a small businessman. So he's very interested in basically making sure that the way government deals with, say, for example, people putting in proposals, is fair and equitable across all of them. And there have been some instances, as you know, particularly in the Liquor Commission, where that really hasn't quite been the case. Places where the state has been sued by some of the people who answered requests for proposals and actually paid million-dollar settlements to them. And when you think about that from our perspective, that's waste. Because when it's all said and done, the playing field should be equal for all, as best one can. So we have people that are interested in things like that, ethics in the government, not wasting money. One of the things I focus on is election law, and I'll comment more about that a little later. So we're open to people. We now have some people coming aboard who are interested in pension reform, because the average individual has no idea about the unfunded pension liabilities in this state. There's various numbers float around, there always are, but the most recent one is around a $3 billion liability for the, million and a quarter people in this state. So these are the kinds of things that if you want to get them fixed, basically you have to get enough people together to articulate a better way, and then you have to go down to the legislature and find friends and promote one's cause. So we're always looking for volunteers that will do these kinds of things, and the way to do it is go to our website, sign up, and get on the email list.
Give us just an example of what you're doing. You brought up election law. There's a couple of other things that...
Sure. Be happy to talk about all of them. But let's talk about election law, because that's the one that it's most interesting, because there's been a big success in this area. Now, I'll talk about election law, but let me preface first. People will say, hey, you're a taxpayer group. Why do you invest time and effort on the integrity of the election law in this state? And the short answer is that we believe that a responsive government, you elect people to represent you. This is the fundamental concept of a republic. And the way our government in the state runs. You elect people, they pass laws. Some of those laws include taxes in which you pay. That's part of the deal, to pay for the cost of the government services. If you arrive at a situation where the possibility exists, or in some cases the probability, that the people voting for their representatives are not actually the people living here who have to pay the taxes, that's wrong. So it undercuts our ability to articulate for taxpayers if the taxpayers we're articulating for didn't elect some of these folks. And I'll go back, this country was founded on the concept or the fight against taxation without representation, right? And there's a little bit of that was going on here. But particularly, that's why we're into it. And we've been involved in this. I can go back and research our first press releases and, you know, our articulation of the problems 5 years ago now. And the problems, I guess, to get right to the basis of it, is the election laws in this state are unique in that until, well, currently today, you get to vote if you say that you intend to make New Hampshire your domicile. And it's totally based on your intent, which of course is unknowable. So people can come up from, let's say, other states and vote here and say, oh yes, my intent is to be in New Hampshire. And then they leave. And you have no idea.
And the fact that they can register to vote at the election day.
Yes.
Complicate. I mean, that's what sets us in, because there's no time to check on what they're saying.
There is no, that is one issue, but I would say the issue I just brought up, which is called, it's based on your intent, trumps it all anyway. Because if you come back and let's say I come up and vote and I have a, you know, a Montana or Massachusetts driver's license, and I come in, register to vote, and I use my driver's license, and they say, well, why do you want to vote here? Well, New Hampshire is my domicile. It's my intent to make this, and I think the words are, the place from which, when you are absent, you intend to return. Okay, so now 6 or 8 months goes by, and let's say somebody comes back and says, oh, Ray Chadwick voted here. Did Ray Chadwick get a driver's license here? Because as we all know, you have 60 days once you move to state to get a driver's license. Well, and by the way, Granite State Taxpayers has actually filed a series of right-to-know requests to actually get some of those kinds of data. But the problem is if they come back and say, Ray, you said you said you were moving here. And the answer, I say, well, yeah, I intended to, but you know, I couldn't get a job. I changed my mind. So it's impossible to have any follow-up. And as a practical matter, there is no follow-up. So the issue with our laws is that things are acceptable. That would not be in other states. Now, on our website, you'll find data. We looked. New Hampshire is unique among states. 49 states and the District of Columbia require you to prove that you are a resident. And by prove, they mean things like, show me your New Hampshire driver's license, show me a utility bill, show me a lease. And in 27 of those, 47 of those states and District of Columbia require you to prove that you've been a resident for a period of time before you let you vote. 27 states require it to be 30 days. So New Hampshire has been unique in this. There are 6 states that allow you to register up until the day of the election. We believe, we are not articulating or not proposing that we change that, only that we tighten up the requirements for proving that you are here. And fortunately, after these years of arguing this, the Senate has just passed, the House has passed, the Senate has agreed with the changes of the House, so this will go to the governor now, a bill called Senate Bill 3, which basically requires that people who want to establish a domicile and vote here actually provide evidence that they have, what is the word, actualized their intent. So show me your driver's license, show me these things. So this...
And is there a day period?
Well, interestingly enough, that you actually have a period of time to do this, which extends till after the election. And I'll comment on that in a second, because most other states, you have until the end of voting to do this. So this Senate Bill 3 puts us basically in the same league as 49 other states and District of Columbia. You can vote here if you show proof that you actually live here. It's fascinating because I went to the Senate hearings. Granite State Taxpayers, interestingly enough, was the only organization that testified for this bill in the Senate hearing and in the House hearing. It was 30 people in the Senate hearing that testified.
What was the argument against?
Well, there are a series of arguments. People have said that it will disenfranchise voters. My answer to that, of course, is, well, we're doing the same thing as every other state. How can it be? Are you suing Massachusetts too? There were a series of other ones that, well, this will require people to bring proof. Well, the bill is structured that if you don't have it today, you still can vote, and you have to bring it back. That's a significant difference, is that this now makes it the responsibility of the person registering to either have the proof or bring it back. Current laws, they aren't even required to do that. So this is a big leap forward.
Is there any penalty if they don't?
Yes, it now turns into basically the standard penalty for, I can't remember the exact term, it's voting irregularity or some such thing, but it provides for fines and potentially jail time. I mean, it's not onerous. This is the expectation, as I said, in every other state. So the one thing I've heard people complain, because the bill actually allows people to come here, and if they don't have the proof on election day, they get a period of time between 10 and 30 days, depending on what hours your town clerk is open, to bring that information back. And people argue, well, geez, they could still misrepresent themselves and vote. And I think the way this was put together, and we've been involved in it, is that it's one thing to pass a bill that makes positive change. It's another thing to have it survive a lawsuit and a court review. So it was essential here, and you've heard the Secretary of State say it and various others, to say nobody gets turned away from voting, i.e., nobody is disenfranchised. There are arguments that this will create longer lines in registration, perhaps not. There are people who say that disenfranchises voters if they have to wait in line. My view is it doesn't disenfranchise, it may disincent, but okay, this is an important thing, voting.
Yeah.
I don't mind waiting a little bit in line. So anyway, this is now passed, started in the Senate, passed to the House. They made some amendments, cleaning up some issues that towns were concerned about, having further tasks put on them to follow voters or find
Actually, it's
voters.
part of their responsibility to ensure that the voters are valid.
It is indeed that, but what this was asking them to do was, if somebody doesn't bring their proof back in 10 days, to actually go knock on their door and see if they actually live where they say they did. And there were people that argued that that was an inappropriate downloading of a state task. So the House changed it to say, okay, if the town clerk doesn't want to do that, they can have the Secretary of State do it. And so I think that's clean.
And they allocated some money for the Secretary of State.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. So in any case, the short answer to this, we've instituted now the same policy required in every other state in D.C. If you want to vote here, you have to be a resident here. If you want to get a driver's license, they will ask you for all these same proofs. And here's the best part. If you want to get in-state tuition here, it's funny which things the state protects. In-state tuition, you have to show 2 tax returns. You have to show that you are on the voter checklist in your town. You have to show your New Hampshire driver's license.
I know about the voter part of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's fascinating.
A registered voter to get your
or
in-state
if
tax.
you are not of the proper age, if you're not 18, your parents have to be.
Yeah.
Or, and you have to get a note from the. It's just phenomenal how they protect
that difference in the pay.
the in-state tuition because it's less income for the state. However, voting, haven't. So I'm very pleased with that. We've done a lot of work on this. We've been up to the State House. People ask, oh, you're lobbying. Yes, we're lobbying, but as a practical matter, we're not lobbyists because we're not paid. And the law on lobbyists says you have to be paid to be registered. So we don't register. We're volunteers, basically exercising our First Amendment right to, how does that right go? To peacefully assemble and petition the government.
Oh, very good. Very good.
So anyway, it's sort of enjoyable.
So are there any other bills that you were backing or things
Well,
that you're trying
there's
to
a lot
do?
of controversy about the budget right
Yeah.
now. And, there are various opinions, and I think it must be taken from different statistics. We are not engaging in that, and our position is very simply, what we're expecting out of budgets is they be balanced. They do not raise taxes or fees, don't add new taxes or fees, and preferably reduce taxes. And the last version that I've now seen, which has come out of the Senate Finance Committee, meets those criteria. So we've looked at the people that have generated the budget, the people that did the work for the governor when they first proposed it, the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, Gary Daniels. These are all people that understand fiscal conservatism and basically a budget has to meet a lot of needs. So there are various opinions on what should be in it. Our opinion is there has to be compromise, and B, we wanted to achieve those certain objectives I've just mentioned. So we generally support the budget as it stands today. We are totally against the idea of moving to a continuing resolution. And we're eagerly watching what's going on in the House even as we speak.
Well,
It's going to be fascinating, to say
yeah.
the least.
Now, as the people might not know, they're all in committees of conference right now.
Right,
There's
exactly.
no more committee meetings.
Yep.
These things are going to be decided by 6 people or so, 6 to 8 people.
Right.
Depending on what
And I
it
think
is.
the challenge then will be whether people can come together to pass it. And the Republicans are in control, and they put together a budget that, as far as we can see, is reasonable and meets the criteria we want. Is it perfection? Is it exactly what I would want or you would want or something? Probably not. But then that's the business of a legislature, is to achieve compromise and
Right.
balance all these competing interests.
We'll see how that works out. It should work out good, but
It's only
you
a
never
week to
know.
go, right?
Well, yeah, this Thursday they turn in their reports.
Yep.
We get a week to look at them.
Yep.
And all we do is concur or not concur.
Well, it's going to be fascinating to watch.
There's nothing really you can argue once you get the full House together again.
That's true. That's true.
And the only thing we can do is maybe send the people back to committee and conference and keep conferencing. And we run out of time when we run to the end of June.
It's going to be hard to imagine that this goes to some kind of continuing resolution. That's happened in the past, but
Yes.
you had different, people of different parties. The governor was a Democrat, the House and the Senate were
When the
Republicans.
governor vetoed the budget, we had to
Sure.
do that. And that went back. That hurt us even more because it actually cut the money that was available.
Right, right.
But this time, we had a very good year. And we had money left over from last year's budget. And we spent it on things that one time only, a little bit of bump to do your roads and bridges
Right.
and a bump to do this and that and the other thing. So I think we covered all of it.
Well, also put money back into the rainy day fund, if I remember that correctly. Put money back into the towns and cities, well, you mentioned this, for road improvements.
Right.
So all in all, it's hard for me to see exactly what the problem would be. Somebody can always argue, well, you could spend less. Well, I'd always argue that, but the question is on what?
Yeah.
And that's
yeah.
what the business of the House is and the
I think
Senate.
that just the fact that they're spending the money, you got over $100 million in the rainy day fund. We haven't had that since I've been up there.
True.
4
It's
years.
been down as
4
low as
terms,
like
I
6
should
million,
say.
I think, at one time, hasn't it?
Yeah, it was very high one time.
Yeah.
And back in, before the start of that recession. But we haven't figured out a way to lower the tax rate, okay? Because I think...
Well, I think that you bring that up. I think it's a good thing that we have begun to lower the business tax rates,
Right.
because that's essential to bring or to foster investment in businesses, and investment in businesses is essential for job growth. But I would also say that when we start looking about how do we go from here, we ought to be dealing also with not just the businesses, but the workers in the businesses, the average citizen, and help give them a little break.
Everybody's afraid to give a little cut in the taxes because they may have to increase it the next time, when that goes through. But you're right, the business tax actually generated more income. That's why we had such a large amount of excess money.
Well, we can do a whole show on what they like to call the Laffer curve, that if you do some marginal tax rates, you actually generate economic development, which brings in more money. And by the way, we have an interesting graph on our website. It's probably about 3 years old now that sort of shows how that kind of stuff works.
Okay,
That's fascinating.
The budget does decrease the business tax a little bit more.
Yep.
And there are some other little things in there that hopefully are going to help the economy. Education is being helped. We're going after some of the health problems and stuff that we had. We have a whole new organization with a Republican governor who's putting in new commissioners for the different divisions, which I see as something that we need.
Yeah. Well, I should point out for your viewers, Granite State Taxpayers is nonpartisan, so we're really agnostic as to whether it's Republicans or Democrats in various things. We do find Republicans tend to be more in line with what we're looking to do, but we'll work with anyone in fostering support for the taxpayer. So we try to marshal our people on those kinds of goals. And as I said earlier, anybody who wants to get involved with us, go to our website, which is www.granitestatetaxpayers.org, and find the place there, get on the email list, or you can become a member. We do have dues, $35 a year.
Oh, wow.
Well, we try to build up our assets here to do better outreach to the public. So anyway, it's a place where people can go and leverage their interest in lower taxes.
And learn a lot.
Yes, exactly. I mean, we've got a series of articles go back there.
Yeah.
Good positions for people who have interest in these issues.
Well, Ray, we've run out of time. So
it's been great. It's gone by so quickly. I'm surprised. Carl, it's a pleasure talking with you.
Okay,
always thank you for having me in today.
Okay, we'll see you in a few more months maybe and see how this all works out for the
I will
state.
look forward to it.
Okay.
It's going to be fun.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening in.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.